All right, it's 3 o'clock. I believe we can go ahead and get started. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eric Loophole, and I'm an instructional technologist at the University Online Education Services at Rutgers University. And on behalf of the 2025 Rutgers University Online Learning Conference, I would like to welcome Anne Michelle. She's an associate teaching professor from the Labor Studies and Employment Relations Department in the School of Management and Learning Relations. I'm also going to be co-presenting as well as moderating. So it's my pleasure to welcome everyone here during the presentation on Ecourse Renewal in a time of Citilabs, diversity, and Gen AI. Please engage using the live chat. You can pose any questions you have there, and we will answer as we go along as the time permits and as the time permits at the end. There's also going to be a couple of polls, so if for some reason you don't see the poll pop up, go ahead and click polls above the chat window on the right-hand side, and then you should be able to see them there.
All right. Before I begin, I want to say what a great conference so far, huh? What a great conference. Of all the conferences that deal with online learning throughout the entire country, there is no other conference that I feel like I belong more than this conference. I actually spoke at the very first one, but I just think it's absolutely outstanding, and I give them a lot of credit. So let me tell you a little bit about our story. I have 6 different online courses. I know, mercy. And every 3 or 4 years, I need to do some sort of major update. Every year, every summer, I'm doing some minor update. When I'm not teaching my courses, either PhD students or adjuncts are teaching my courses, there's always in some sort of rotation. But what I've found with all of the information that has been offered, having to do with diversity and inclusion and also teaching with Gen AI, I have really found that I've been working piecemeal in all of my courses. And I really wanted to take the expertise that I have created in both DEI and in teaching with Gen AI and apply it to my courses. And I wanted to start fresh. And then came an opportunity. Eric Loophole had shared with me and showcased with me the courses that he had been developing using Design Plus. And then I went to an in-service in my school that highlighted what Design Plus was all about. Well, I saw that and I was all in. And so Eric knows how complex my courses are. He has been working with me for over 20 years. There is not one course that I have designed that he's not somehow been a part of. So we both said, why don't we work on this? So we started with 2. And let me tell you, we started with a blank shell. And when I say a blank shell, that means absolutely nothing in it. And so I was able to do a large redesign. You're part of the story?
So as she mentioned, we've both been involved in online learning here at Rutgers almost since the beginning. For over 20 years, we've been through multiple LMSs. I've served both in design and support roles. For the past 4 years, I've been using Design Plus to work on course customizations. And about 18 months ago, they released a new version of the sidebar, and that really was a game changer for me. And I've really become heavily invested using that as a design tool now. I also conduct a webinar on Ally and other accessibility tools that are available in Canvas at Rutgers. And as she mentioned, as this came apart because I wanted to work on something that was going to be a complex course and kind of see how we could push the limits of Design Plus and what it could do.
Yeah. Now, the presentation today that we're going to be giving, we're not going to be talking about, the best practices in course design. That's a whole day in service. We're just going to be talking about what we did and some best practices there, because as I alluded to with the last slide, there has been a whirlwind of opportunity. First, for learning how to create more equitable and inclusive online learning spaces for all students, then a revolutionary online course layout app, the Design Plus, and then, of course, finally, the use of a technological tool that's eventually going to transform our teaching, students' learning, students' jobs, and all of our daily lives. So that's what this session is about. It's about redesigning an online course from a blank template in the age of Citilabs Design Plus, student diversity, and Gen AI. And what I'd like to do is find out if any people that are participants are actually in the process of doing any type of update on a course. So that's the first poll. If you'll put that poll up for me. Okay, here we go. Oh, wonderful. Okay. So we've got some individuals that really wish that they had time to engage in a more than just a regular update. Okay. And of course, we welcome those who are not redesigning at this time. Hopefully anything that we share will be of assistance to you. Okay, let's take one more poll so that we understand as far as what you've been doing in your courses over the last several years, having to do with DEI or having to do with Gen AI. Can you put that second poll up, Eric? I don't think all of those options came up.
Yeah, options there.
Okay. I just want to see if anyone has done Gen AI both or okay. All right. Very interesting. All right. Thank you for that input so that I know who's in our audience, our participants. Okay, let's move on, Eric. So I'm going to start with fostering an inclusion and belonging. And I'm going to use these three: design, create, and encourage in both when I talk about both the inclusion and belonging, and then also about Gen AI on the back end. And I'm going to be talking about how I've renovated the design in the course, what I've tried to create in the course, and then how I've encouraged students. Next slide. We're going to start with the create, that element that was in the middle. And here I'm just going to mention quickly about formally communicating belonging, establishing classroom norms, and applying small but significant changes to impact culture. I don't know, because I couldn't poll you on every element that I'm going to talk about today or that Eric's going to talk about today, but I don't know if you've designed a diversity and inclusion statement for your syllabus, something official. But it's taken me years to get to the place where I feel comfortable with mine. This is the latest iteration. And there's 2 points that I want to mention. Besides uploading this into the syllabus, which we're not ever sure if students are actually reading the syllabus, I also, in my overview video, discuss inclusion and belonging for all students. Within this official statement, I want to bring your attention to the second point, because this is an essential element. All students are free to hold and voice personal opinions that could be different than your professor or peers. and unless these voiced opinions are harmful to others. This is the critical aspect when we talk about grading. Students are never graded on their opinions, but on their knowledge of course concepts and their critical thought on that concept. So we can work with a group of very diverse students, and that's not just the diversity that we would think of traditionally, where race, gender, religion, diversity of ability, individuals in the LGBTQ community, veterans, international students. For us in our department, because we have a degree to completion program, individuals that are older and just returning to school. That's what we usually think that are the diverse students. But we also, because of the courses that I teach DEI courses. And because of I teach those courses, there are students that come into my classes all the time that do not hold the same perspective that I'm teaching from, or that the majority of the students are exhibiting or feel about the topics. So this is an important point, so that they know that they can voice a dissenting opinion. What really counts is their knowledge base and how they can think about that. The other point I want to show is that I am creating the norms for the course, what I'm going to do, your professor, and what students are expected to do to create this inclusive classroom. All right. Now, here are two small but significant changes that I made that I would suggest can be used in other courses. And if you are with Rutgers University, Rutgers Shout Out was offered to all of us recently. And, this is not only offers us a phonetic description, but also students are able to pronounce their names in an audio tape. And, respected students have their name used when referring to them. And from my perspective, I often offer feedback frequently, either in the audio or the video app within Gradebook. So instead of typing out, especially if I have to give a lot of feedback, I now can actually pronounce their names correctly and refer to them. And that creates a belonging within the course. The next one has to do with poll results. Now, about 20 to 30% of the students are not going to vote in these polls the same way the majority does. So whether you are with the majority opinion in the course or the minority opinion in the course, you're going to be able to see, although you don't know who they are, these are anonymous, you're going to understand that there are other people in the course that believe as you do. And that makes people feel a little bit safe. Let me go on to design. Now, Eric's going to talk about accessibility in a moment, but I'd like to mention one accommodation that I have begun offering in my redesigned courses. I indicated that we started with 2. I'm actually working with 2 this semester. Over the summer, we'll do 3 more. So we're actually working with more than 2 at this point. Okay, so I have some very involved assignments. Of my 6 courses, 3 of them involve a multi-week to a mostly full semester team assignment. In addition, many of my assignments are scaffolded. And finally, students often have to upload material in multiple places. One, they're publishing in a work area for their team or their learning community for them to read and comment upon, and then also uploading it into Gradebook for me to sign. So there's a lot of moving parts to my assignments. And I thought, because I was given positive reinforcement from students in the student teaching evaluation surveys at the end of the semester, how well and complete my instructions were, that this was a good thing, until neurodiverse students started interacting with me, that's saying that these overly complete instructions were deterring them or making them not feel good as they were doing the assignments. So what I did was I created, for just about every assignment, this is going to be an ongoing process, but for the 2 courses that I have redone, all the assignments also have me verbally discussing what the assignment means and also offering some hands-on in the assignment. So that is one of the design changes I made, and I've gotten positive feedback from students already. Now, the next one has to do with those students that I indicated may not come to the courses. I teach courses where the content is emotionally or socially, and now, unfortunately, politically involved, complex. And not all students, because of religion or because of their culture or because of their past experiences, come to the course with the same perspective that I'm teaching. And so what I've found is once you establish good social norms in the course, then what we need to do is allow students to talk some of these issues out. And one of them, I'm using meritocracy because our president has made meritocracy and diversity hires something that everybody's talking about these days. So this is one of the assignments in the portfolio assignment. You can see there's an A through E. So they can tell you, yes, I believed in meritocracy coming into this course, and gosh darn it, doesn't matter what you told me, I'm believing it now too. 2, the bottom one is, I never believed this. I always recognized that it was a myth. What I have found is allowing students to share this material. Now, once again, what they're graded on is not this opinion. They have to describe meritocracy so that I understand their knowledge on it. And then how they interact with other students using critical thought is what is graded. What I have found is it doesn't matter what material I upload or what I indicate to students in their overview videos. Students change their opinions, these ones that have dissenting views, once they read the experiences or the opinions of the more diverse students who have actually had experiences in some of these discriminatory situations. So I encourage the dialogue. And sometimes people might find that dangerous. I do not. Okay, Eric,
Okay, so
over to you.
aside from becoming an upcoming legal requirement where all public courses must be accessible, it's also a best practice. And what we mean by accessibility is making your content usable by as many people as possible. Notice there's no mention of disability in here. It's not about accommodations for disability. It's about making students feel welcome and like they belong in the course, and that efforts have been made to meet them and provide the material in a way they can easily understand and digest. So when designing with accessibility in mind, we're talking about building in flexibility into the online and social spaces. We're also going to be proactively looking for barriers to access while you build. That part is really important because it's much easier to proactively address these issues than to have to go back and fix them, as you will see in a minute. And it also means, doing things like making sure all your images have alt text or the videos are transcripted, that interactive elements have keyboard navigation capabilities for people using screen readers. There's just a wide variety of topics. We can't go too far into it in this limited time, but there is a whole lot more to digest when it comes to accessibility. Some of the tools that we at Rutgers have available are, aside from the Canvas Rich Content Editor, which has its own built-in accessibility checker, we also have a tool called Ally. So in addition to checking individual pages or files that have been uploaded, it will also give you an entire course-wide report to help you understand it. And when I get to the section on Citilabs and Design Plus, it has its own accessibility tools and checkers, which will really help you as you're designing to identify any potential issues before you get too far. And as I mentioned, Ally gives you a course-wide report, and as you can see from the numbers on the right, going back to a course that you haven't really been paying attention to all the different accessibility elements and having to remediate these can be rather daunting. It's not as daunting as it looks from the numbers, but it does require a fair amount of work to do. So if you can address these issues ahead of time as you're designing and building your course, it will save a lot of trouble on the back end.
Yes, and by the way, that's fairly embarrassing because, of course, he pulled up one of the courses that we haven't had done a total renew on, and that's a good reason for me to start with a clear shell because there are so many ally violations in there that we're going to start fresh. All right, let me talk a little bit about teaching with Gen AI. That was the other element that came into a knowledge base within the last several years. Now, I was certified in teaching with AI last year, and I'm continuing that certification through what Rutgers University also offers. So this is something that I really embraced from the very beginning. And so once again, I'm going to talk about the design, how I designed it, what I created within that design, and then how to encourage students. And we're going to do a little show and tell in this area too. All right. Can you switch the slide?
Yep, hold on.
Once I became certified in teaching with AI, I understood that we really needed to recognize that students had needs, and I began to survey my students. Over 300 students in 12 either school or department course offerings that I was a part of. And I asked them 50 questions in 4 topic areas. And I did this for 2 falls and 1 spring. Let me show you a little bit about what I found out about our students, which, remember, when I'm talking about our students, they come from multiple departments because I teach a contemporary challenges course, which means all SAS students can enroll in my courses. So we have our school courses, our school students, but also I teach students. I probably teach your students. Okay, so here's what we found out. First, I had to ask about cheating. So about 12% of the students report that they cheat, and that was consistent over all of the surveys. Many students say, look, I can think of opportunities for me to use Gen AI where I won't cheat. The next type of question I asked was, how are you using Gen AI? Go ahead and switch that. Once I saw that this was not changing, that I was giving this survey to all of my students over time, I switched. Go ahead and click the next slide, Eric. In 2025 to a more comprehensive list of how they could use Gen AI. And this helps me to understand what they're trying to do. The next important slide, as far as where students are, it's important to note that 21% of students have never touched this, and another 45% of students have only used it once or twice. So this Gen AI is widespread across the university is really not what we think. As you see, only 17% are using it either occasionally or then frequently. So we have novices that we're working with. And the final, or the second to final aha point that I had was that students' perception of their competency may not actually be accurate because I teach, all my courses have a Gen AI associated assignment. I am reading a lot of the transcripts, and I understand what prompts they're using. And the fact that 83% of the students said that they felt an ability to design prompts for specific results, I question that one because I've actually seen the results. Now, here's the most important one. And that is that we have a mandate to provide training to students because they want to know what is the responsible use for Gen AI in courses. Let's go to the next one. So here's my design. Whoops. Wait.
So,
Back. We need to talk to students about Gen AI literacy. We cannot just be the police that say, you can't use this, or this is the only places you can use it. We have to help them understand more about the tool and how, when it is appropriate to use. That is at least my opinion now that I have gone through the certification process. So what I want to show you is the Gen AI literacy tool that I use in at least the courses now that we have gone through the entire process. Go ahead and pull that up, Eric, and I'm just going to ask you to scroll down once you get it up. Okay. Hold on, just moving too fast. Bring it back up. What I want to, students get a little bit of an introduction that's at the top, and you'll see that yellow space. I received hundreds of comments in an open space. You know, you wish students would talk to you, and this must be really important because very few students did not leave a comment when I gave this survey. So I have at least 250 comments from which I culled through and used some of them in a rotating comment area. And I talked to them about the survey and why this exists because students asked for it. The next section, go ahead and bring that down. That next section is what Rutgers University offers students. You can see, what is that? Copilot and Google. What are the two? This is a little bit small for me, but there are two that Rutgers, you log in as a Rutgers student and you can use these. And then to the right are several that I would like students to use that are free of charge. I have not done much except list that there are LinkedIn, that there's LinkedIn information. Over the summer, I'm going to look at that. Now let's look at the accordion and look at those pretty accordions. We're going to talk about how wonderful those accordions are. So what am I talking about here? I am talking about what they expect in this course, how we're going to use Gen AI in this course, or I'm going to open up the foundational one so the students can see, the participants can see, yeah. AI use in this course, I believe it is. Open that one up. Okay, so you can see that I have a video and it goes over all of the points that you would think a professor would be talking to their students about. And it's in sections so that they can watch little pieces of it. So what they can't do, what they can do, what I encourage them to do, and then what we will do in this course. And you'll see on the side, I'm going to make this screen a little bit bigger for me. Hold on just a moment. Okay, you'll see what's permissible, what's not permissible, and how you earn points if you're going to be using Gen AI. So that's foundational information. Okay, if you can close that, Eric, and let's move down a bit. Let's look at citing Gen AI content. This is a just-in-time information. If I'm going to require students to use Gen AI in assignments, then they need to know how to provide in-text citations. And here I teach them about APA and MLA. They're the two that most students use. Why we need to attach transcripts and how to go about that. And so we have just-in-time information in it, as well as foundational information. And for those who are very concerned about students and believe that they will not use their critical thinking skills when they're using Gen AI, I have a whole, can you open that at the bottom there? We don't let Gen AI do the thinking for you. So I talked to him and I said, now let's talk about what critical thinking is. And let's make sure that you continue that process as you engage with Gen AI in the future. So I encourage them not to let a chatbot do the thinking for them. And in all of the assignments, which you are about to see, I do not allow them to do that. Okay, so there's your little tour of the AI literacy that I offer. Let me see what we do. Okay, so here are the 3 different Gen AI associated assignments that I've created for these new courses. One is a searchable library. Another one is using Gen AI as a tutor. And the third is the creator of case studies. And the third one, we're actually going to take you back into one of my course shells and do a little show and tell. But let's look at the searchable library first. Now, in this first example, we're asking students to cull through a lot of material and make some meaning of the content that's associated with certain journal articles in preparation for engaging in the first discussion of the semester. And this is on social justice and DEI. Now, this first week also serves as the Gen AI training week in this particular course. Now, here students are going to request summaries. This is what I'm asking them to do. They're going to request summaries, comparisons, going to look at different perspectives, similarities and differences between these 3 articles. Now, you can go to the next slide. Now, these 3 articles are very interesting because if you remember beginning, I don't know, a year and a half ago, we started all of the discussion about DEI and wokeness. And one of the articles in the Academy of Management and Perspectives is actually talking about how we are ruining workplace training by being woke. Well, this article, I personally could not believe that the article was actually accepted by the Academy, but it was. We have 2 dissenters offer rebuttals about that article, and one of which is our very own from RBS, from Rutgers Business School, offered one of the dissenting opinions. Now, because this is so contentious, and we get into it in these DEI courses, I wanted them to see what is out there as far as, in this place, the workplace. What are we talking about? What do they want to transform in the workplace instead of using the different DEI applications that they have been using? What is woke about this? And so that's 30 pages, by the way. No bibliography. And I'll tell you what, please put in the chat if you have found any student today that's going to read 3 journal articles, 30 pages worth of small type, and then write a description of an original comment in a threaded discussion. It's not going to happen. So here we use this tool. We load it in. Here's our searchable library. We have those 3 in there, and then they can ask for those summaries and what do the 2 journal articles that are rebuttals, how do they have similar opinions? How is that compared to what is being offered in the original, very highly controversial article? So there is a searchable library example. Let's move on to the second example.
Before I move on, let's just address a quick question that came up.
Sure.
So, is there an existing Rutgers tutorial on ethical AI use for students and/or course content instructors can embed in our courses? Are we supposed to develop Gen AI use in the course content themselves?
Rutgers doesn't have that. What I can tell you, what I asked my students, who should be doing this? I asked, as you heard me ask, 300 students, who should be doing this? Rutgers, for me, it was similar, our department, or our school, our department, or the professors that are teaching you. And students overwhelmingly said, we want the professors to develop this. But there is nothing available Rutgers-wide for that. And that is because, of course, we are not clear on there are those who don't want to use Gen AI at all. So, and then of course there are individuals such as myself on the other end of the spectrum that have begun to use Gen AI as a teaching learning tool. So you're not going to have you're not going to have something come out of Rutgers University. The only thing that is out at Rutgers University is that if they plagiarize using chatbots, plagiarism is plagiarism. So if that can be caught, then students can be policed and prosecuted. Somebody can turn them in, and then they can go through the process. But as far as support materials, no, that doesn't exist yet, not on the university level. It could be in your department. I know it isn't in my department. Okay, so the next searchable library assignment is in another course. What we do here is, instead of those 3 that are so connected, I use multiple, somewhat connected, under 3 topic areas. There's one on success. There's 2 others. Lists. Students pick 3 from one list. Make a searchable library, ask those same type of questions that the other assignment was discussing. And then they have to do something with this more than what we were looking at in the first example. And go ahead, Eric, and show this next page.
Okay, and we have 15 minutes left.
Oh, okay. I will go through this one, and then we will go right to the cornerstone one. So what they need to do is not only give a summary in their own words, they need to think critically about it. Why is this important to their learning community? They need to put together a question for their learning community so they can discuss it. Those type of elements, and that's what I wanted to show to you, is that this doesn't stop critical thinking. I'm creating these assignments to help support it. Eric, I want you to get to your part in Citilabs, because this is so. Why don't you skip to those slides, because this is so revolutionary.
Okay, and just so everybody knows, these slides are available. I pinned it at the top of the chat window, so they're free for you to download, and you can review the ones we've had to skip later.
Oh, yes. All of them have grading rubrics.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the design process of this. And one thing is why does it matter? Accessibility is one thing, but these are 2 quotes that kind of resonate with me, and that kind of speak to the design process as what you're doing is trying to create an experience for the students, and it's about how functional it is, not just how it looks or feels. Not that part isn't important as well. And going into the process, there are a lot of models that you can choose. I encourage anybody to explore the different learning models that are out there, adopt one that works for you. For me, I like the ADDIE model, although I like this particular version of it where evaluate is central. Evaluation is ongoing, constant. Every step of the process that we go through, you're evaluating what you're doing, in addition to going through another evaluation at the end. Some other materials that you might want to look into that will be really helpful for a deeper dive would be the Universal Design for Learning Platform, or UDL, as well as Quality Matters, or QM. So the first part of this is the analyze, where you need to first set goals. So the first is defining what the learning goals, but you also want to think about what your teaching goals are, because this isn't just about student experience. You as an instructor are also a user in the course, so therefore your experience is important as well. And then you want to look and analyze what tools that you do have to work with. This can include the native apps within Canvas, any external apps that are available. We have a full list of external apps at Rutgers, but also design aids. And the one that I'm specifically going to talk about today is Design Plus. There's 3 parts of that tool, and I'll do a little demonstration of them at the end. But if you are not part of the Rutgers community, your Design Plus is only available within Canvas. So if your institution doesn't use Canvas or doesn't use Design Plus, there are other things you can use from like using a mirror board to storyboard out things. There are a lot of different design tools you can utilize. Then we come to the design part. So we have, I'm not sure that's coming up. I didn't see it earlier. Anyway, you want to define your style. So this includes both your color scheme. Are you going to stick with the university's default color scheme, or do you want to do things on your own? I know Anne Michelle, with 6 courses, likes to have each of her courses a different color, and in part that helps not only her but also her students quickly identify what course they're in without even having to think about it or double check to make sure they click the right tile. You also want to think about your design elements. So these are going to, this is basically the core and the content of your course, what you're going to put in your modules. You're most likely going to have like an overview page, or you're going to have a separate reading page, or do you want to fold that into your overview? What assignments are you going to include? And in order to foster this and make that process a little easier, I highly recommend creating a course map. At the end of the slide deck, there is a reference slide, and there is a link to a sample course map that's editable in Word you can download as a starting point. But it can be as simple as just taking a Word document with a couple of columns and a brief table and mapping out your course. Okay, this is module 1. These are the elements I'm going to have into that. I also recommend, although not required in this, is to also put your learning goals and your module learning objectives in, so you can make sure that everything is aligned. After design, we're going to go and move on to develop, and this is really focused on templates, templates, and templates. So in the example here on the left, the first 3 items, color palette, content blocks, icons, these are actually defined elements. They're not really the templates. The next 3 items are templates that have been created in courses. And the reason I point this out is that sometimes you're going to have elements that you might need to use ad hoc. Maybe you need to add a discussion or page, or you want to add something from an element to that. These things can make that process easier. And on the right is just a quick sample of what a template could possibly look like, where you have your header or banner image, you have some navigation bar features, and then you have your main content areas that will get filled in later. The other part of develop is planning out your process. So that's where you're going to take your course map and look at, okay, what elements do I need? Okay, I'm going to need a template for assignments. Do I have different types of assignments? Maybe I have assignments that are pulled in from a third-party integration like Cengage, in which case might need a separate template for that as opposed to a standard Canvas one. So you need to plan out what it is that you actually are going to need in this process before we actually create them. And finally, the implement is where everything comes together. That's where you take your course map, your design elements, your plan, you put everything else together, and all that becomes left is filling in the content on the pages. And I will do a quick demonstration of this in just a moment. When we get to evaluate, I split this into 2 slides because there's the in process, the center part of that first graphic I showed, that you want to be constantly thinking about as you're doing the various steps. And these all apply to any of the steps. So, does the content align with the course objectives? Is adding this going to increase or decrease the cognitive load for the students? Am I creating any barriers to accessibility, equity, and inclusion? Is there an additional cost that might be a problem for some students if I'm using a third-party tool? Is this going to help foster student engagement, or is it possibly going to turn the students off from it? They might find this too much time consuming. Do I have enough instruction and resources for the students to succeed in this? Or, wink, wink, have I provided too much?
Who could you be talking about?
Am I just overwhelming the students with the amount of information I'm providing for this? And if I am, but the information is necessary, how can I make it more digestible? Another very important consideration that can be easy to overlook is my design mobile friendly? Is this going to work if students are using a cell phone or a tablet to navigate the course as opposed to a computer? I've been guilty of this one because, I'm a little bit older. I grew up on computers, and from the early days of the PC, and that's kind of what I'm used to. So my mindset is on a computer monitor, but I always have to remind myself to make sure that it's also going to be mobile friendly. And also another one I like to always ask, okay, after I've done something, go back and think, is there a better way I can do this? Is there a better option? Is there another tool that maybe I'm not aware about that I could research to make this even better than I already did? The post-process part of evaluate is where you're going to, after you've finished with the implementation, you're going to step back, review your course thoroughly, make sure you didn't miss any elements. Maybe contact with some peers or colleagues, or even former students, provided you trust them to review new material, what their thoughts are on it. Run the Ally course report so you can remediate any major accessibility issues prior to the launching of the course. Use tools like the Canvas link validation tool to make sure you don't have any broken links that are going to create issues. Do you have adequate mechanisms in the course to allow students to provide feedback, such as polling or an open, contact policy where students know they can reach out to you and provide you with feedback. And there's also informal evaluations. This I actually added after watching an earlier presentation today. But you may want to search for yourself on the Rutgers Reddit channels or Rate My Professor and see if students are putting any feedback that can help you in the design process in those locations that you might not otherwise be aware of. So as I mentioned, there's the resources here, and let me jump back into Canvas.
This is are you going to show
Yeah, I'm going to talk about this if you want.
This is the OB course. So this is the new design. What's important is that students have some accessibility. They can easily access the instructions, the resources. Click on one of the resources so that they can see that. And then for every assignment, the rubric is right there. One of the things I'd like to announce is that, and all of the videos that I told you for each assignment that I've made a video. One of the things that's important is I asked Eric to do the impossible. In my design, I asked him to do things that never existed before. And multiple times on a national scale, he has done it and then submitted it to design labs. And now people from across the country are using the design that he did because I asked, for example, I want them from any page to be able to click a link and be able to write me. That they don't have to go through all of this mess to try to get to me. I want them to be able to get to me on any page. And there's a link to interact with your professor on each of the pages. You saw some of the accordions. What you don't see is how well the course not only looks good, but you can take a lot of information and collapse it in certain, I'm going to call them containers, but areas. We should, however, indicate, Eric, you can tell them this part, is that I asked students after we used these for the first time in fall, I asked students to come back and talk to my designer about what they thought about the course.
Okay, we're in our last 2 minutes, so let me try to fly through the next part. So the first part, and this is kind of what we were working with, a sample page from the course that was being redesigned. As you can see, visually, it's not too exciting. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of scrolling that has to be done. And maybe the first time going through it, it's not that bad for the scrolling. But when you want to go back and find something, it's like, well, what part of the page was that on? And you can spend a lot of time going back and forth. So one of the goals was try to reduce that and make this into more chunked content that's easier to locate. So in doing that, created this. So here we added some style elements as well as some navigations, including the message professor that she just put, broke things down into an introduction. And then we have the content and assignments. These are done in tab elements that students can navigate and click across. And sometimes when there was a lot of content, it became necessary to even nest tabs.
Multiple topics, yeah.
Yeah, so where there were multiple topics being discussed, we would have nested tabs here. Nested tabs aren't really recommended. They can be complicated to do, but sometimes it's necessary, and as long as you're careful, you can pull it off. Now, there were some issues with this. Some students had some feedback that they found some of the things confusing. So when I went back through and did my review of it, I also met with 2 students to get their direct feedback. And here are some changes that I'm going to highlight. I don't know if you can spot some of the things that might be an issue, but you should be able to see the difference here. So one of the comments was that navigation bar was a little confusing. It didn't stand out. They weren't sure what it was. So if you're part of Rutgers, you do have access to these. I'll show you how to access them right after this. I took the these things and made them stand out a little more, added a drop shadow. So now they look like buttons instead of a bar here. And same thing with these elements. I made sure that I put a drop shadow to give it a little bit of more oomph so it stood out as this was something that was likely clickable. So real quickly, getting into Design Plus, it is available to all faculty at Rutgers. If you have editing privilege in a course, you can access Design Plus. So when you go in and edit a course, you may notice a little rocket ship up here. When you click on that, it will open up the Design Plus interface. I don't really have time to go through this, but this is where all the magic happens. The main things when you're starting out to lessen the learner curve is pay attention to this top bar. So if you're editing an element, you're going to use the target. If you're adding an element, you're going to use the plus. Here's the tab where you can look at accessibility. And if you need help on any element that you're working on, there is documentation that's available here, but also within the various tools. If I wanted to try to add something, there is going to be additional help links as well as a walkthrough. So up here, you can click on a walkthrough and go through a video to learn how to use this. The other tool, which really ties everything I was talking about together, is the multi-tool. So there's several elements of this, but specifically in the course design, you can use it to build your templates. I actually don't bother. I just start with a Canvas page and use Citilabs, build out the template, save it, and then I can add it back in with module build. So when I want to build out my modules, I can use it to make changes to my existing structure without having to go through one at a time, but I can also set up the whole course from scratch. We'll just say this is a short 3-week course. I can choose a prefix. We're going to do this by week. It's going to start with number 1, and then you can add things you're going to do. So I'm going to want a page, and I know I'm going to use my overview page. So here's where the magic is. I can select my template. I go and find my module overview template. Content and assignments is the correct one for this one. I'm going to have discussions. I'm going to use my discussion template to go ahead and set that up. You can add classic quizzes, but not new quizzes. You can also add assignments in here, and I can pick my assignment template to use here. You can also add some other information in here, and then it's just a matter of generating. Now, at this point, I have not created anything in my course yet. Nothing has changed in my modules. This is giving me a preview. So I can say, oh, I'm not going to use a discussion in module 2. So let me get rid of that right here. Maybe I want to add a quiz here in its place. So you can, once you generate this, you can quickly make changes to it, apply templates, and then once you're done, add modules to course. And it's going to go through the process of creating everything. And then when we go back to modules,
it's done. Yeah. I think we have to go. We have to let these people
we have to go. Sorry.
My point would be to contact Eric if you're looking to work with Design Plus, and to really, if you're going to be renovating a course, to take the chance and start with a blank shell and be able to build that out. I recognize there was a question here about the assignment videos, and I do have different videos for each of the assignments, and they are associated with the page on the assignments, and also they show up on the within the module. So I have them that you can click them right from the module, or that you can click them from within what I call the content and assignment page, or what others might be for. But yes, I have created them for for every single assignment. It's kind of a labor of love at this point. And
Thank you all very much for attending this, and sorry we ran a little short on time there at the end. I put both of our email contacts in the chat, as well as the slides are available for download, and feel free to reach out to us with any additional questions, and we can answer them after the conference.
Thank you.
All right, take care, everyone.